The evening was quiet. The streets were almost empty, and the cold wind moved through the narrow lanes. A poor girl named Aisha was walking home after a long, tiring day. She carried a small bag of groceries, just enough to survive another day. Life had never been easy for her, but she had learned to stay strong and kind even in her struggles. As she turned the corner near the old marketplace, she saw something that made her stop. On the side of the road, against a broken wall, sat a homeless man. His clothes were dirty and torn, his face tired and pale. His hair was messy, and his hands were trembling as he tried to keep himself warm. People walked past him quickly, as if he was invisible, or worse, a problem they did not want to see. Aisha stood there for a moment. Something about the man touched her heart. Maybe it was the sadness in his eyes, or maybe it was because she knew what hunger and pain felt like. She looked at him carefully. He was not like the usual beggars she had seen before. His posture was different, his eyes deep, as if they held a story no one cared to ask about. She took a deep breath and walked closer. "Sir, are you all right?" she asked softly. The man looked up slowly. His eyes were sharp, but his voice was weak. I'm fine," he whispered, though his body told a different story. Aisha could see he was not fine at all. His lips were dry, and his hands shook from the cold. She thought about the little food she had bought for herself. She did not have much, but she felt guilty walking away. She pulled out a piece of bread and offered it to him. "Here, please eat something." The man stared at the bread for a few seconds before taking it gently. He ate slowly, as if every bite was painful and precious at the same time. "Thank you," he said. His voice cracked, but there was something unusual in the way he spoke. His words were polite, almost elegant, unlike how she expected a beggar to sound. Aisha noticed this, but she did not say anything. Instead, she asked, "Do you have anywhere to go tonight?" The man shook his head. "No. I sleep wherever I can." She looked at him, then at the sky turning darker. She knew the night would be cold. She thought about her small home. It was not much, a tiny room with little space, but at least it was warm. She hesitated for a moment, wondering if it was safe to invite a stranger. But her heart told her he was not dangerous. He looked too broken to harm anyone. "Would you like to come with me?" she asked carefully. "It's not a big place, but at least you can rest." The man lifted his eyes and looked at her. For a second, his expression changed. It was almost like a hidden smile, as if he was surprised by her kindness. But just as quickly, he lowered his head again. "If it's not trouble," he said. Aisha nodded and helped him stand. His body was weak, but she noticed that even in his weakness, he carried himself with a strange dignity. It was almost as if he was used to respect, not pity. As they walked together, people on the street stared at them. Some whispered to each other. A poor girl bringing home a beggar, it was something no one understood. Aisha ignored them. She had learned long ago that people always talk, no matter what you do. The walk to her house was quiet. The man did not speak much, but Aisha could feel his eyes studying everything, the streets, the houses, even her. It was not the stare of a beggar, it was the look of someone who noticed details carefully, like he was measuring the world. When they reached her small home, she opened the door and welcomed him inside. The man stepped in slowly, his eyes moving across the little space. There was only one bed, a small table, and a chair. Nothing more. Yet his eyes softened, as if this tiny place meant more to him than the richest palaces. "You can rest here," Aisha said. "I will make some tea." The man nodded and sat down. His tired face relaxed for the first time. But as Aisha turned to prepare tea, she did not see the way he looked at her home. His eyes grew sharp again, as if he was thinking deeply. He pulled something from his pocket, a small, expensive-looking pen. He turned it in his hand for a moment, then quickly hid it before she returned. That pen did not belong to a homeless man. And in that quiet room, with the sound of boiling water, the secret of who he truly was began to hide beneath the mask of poverty. The small room smelled of tea and warmth. Aisha placed a steaming cup in front of the man. His hand shook slightly as he reached for it, but he held it with surprising care, as if he had not forgotten the manners of a well-raised man. He took a slow sip and closed his eyes, as though this simple drink was the finest thing he had ever tasted. "Thank you," he said softly. "It has been a long time since I felt this kind of kindness." Aisha smiled gently. "It's nothing. I only did what anyone should do." But deep inside, she knew not everyone would do the same. She had seen it earlier, people passing by him on the street, ignoring his pain as though he was invisible. Her heart ached at the thought, but she pushed it aside. The man sat quietly, looking around the room. There was nothing special, just a small table, an old cupboard, a bed, and a few pictures on the wall. Yet, his eyes studied every detail carefully, as if he wanted to memorize it. "What is your name?" Aisha asked. He hesitated for a second before replying, "Kamal." It sounded like a simple name, but the way he spoke it had weight. "And you?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. "Aisha," she answered. For a moment, silence filled the room. The air carried an odd feeling, like two strangers connected by fate, though they had just met. That night, Aisha gave him a blanket and a place on the floor near the bed. She could see he was exhausted. Within minutes, Kamal closed his eyes, but even in sleep, his face carried a strange calmness. Aisha lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind filled with questions. Who was this man really? Why did he look different from other beggars? Why did his eyes seem full of secrets? She could not explain it, but she felt her life was about to change. The next morning, Aisha woke up early to prepare breakfast. She expected to see Kamal still sleeping, but to her surprise, he was already awake. He was sitting quietly, looking out the window, lost in thought. "You're awake early," Aisha said. "I don't sleep much," Kamal replied. His tone was simple, but there was something deeper behind it. She placed a small plate of bread on the table. "It's all I have," she said. Kamal looked at the food, then at her. "You share what little you have with a stranger. That is not common." Aisha shrugged. "Maybe. But I believe everyone deserves kindness." His eyes softened again, and for a brief moment, it almost looked like admiration. After breakfast, Kamal insisted on helping her. He cleaned the floor, washed the dishes, and even repaired a broken chair. Aisha was surprised by how skillful he was. His hands were steady, his work neat. This was not the behavior of a man who had lived on the streets his whole life. "You've done this before?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I have fixed many things in my life." Aisha laughed lightly. "Well, I could use the help. Thank you." The day passed, and slowly, Kamal became a part of her little home. He listened carefully when she spoke, helped her with chores, and never complained. The neighbors, however, noticed. One of them, an older woman, stopped Aisha outside the house. "Why are you keeping that man in your home? He is a beggar. He could be dangerous." Aisha felt the sting of the words, but she stood firm. "He is just a man in need. That's all." The woman shook her head. "You're too soft-hearted. You'll regret it." But Aisha ignored her. Something inside told her that Kamal was not dangerous. In fact, she felt safer with him around, even though she did not know why. That night, after dinner, Kamal sat by the table, staring at the small lamp. "Why are you helping me, Aisha?" he asked suddenly. His voice was low but serious. Aisha paused. "Because you needed help. Isn't that reason enough?" Kamal looked at her carefully, almost as if he was searching her soul. "Most people would walk away." "I'm not most people," Aisha said quietly. For the first time, Kamal smiled. It was small, almost hidden, but real. "You remind me of something I lost a long time ago," he said softly. "What's that?" she asked. He shook his head, his smile fading. "Kindness." Later that night, when Aisha was asleep, Kamal pulled a small object from his pocket. It was a golden ring, shining faintly in the dim light. He held it tightly in his hand, staring at it with eyes full of memories and pain. This was no ordinary man. But Aisha, sleeping peacefully, did not know that the stranger she had welcomed into her home carried a past that could change her life forever. And outside, the cold wind whispered through the streets, as if carrying the secrets he had yet to reveal. Days turned into weeks, and the stranger named Kamal slowly became a part of Aisha's life. What began as a simple act of kindness grew into a strange companionship. He was quiet, respectful, and never demanded anything. Yet there was always something about him that Aisha could not understand. He was different. Kamal spoke politely, as though he had been raised with discipline. He carried himself with dignity, even in the old clothes she gave him. When he ate, his manners were gentle, careful, like someone who had dined at rich tables before. Even the way he fixed things around the house showed experience and intelligence. Aisha often found herself wondering, how did a man like this end up on the streets? One morning, Aisha was leaving for the market. She needed to buy vegetables and bread. "Will you come with me?" she asked Kamal. He shook his head. "No. I will stay here and take care of the house." She smiled. "It's not much of a house." "But it is a home," Kamal replied. His words stayed in her mind as she walked to the market. While she was away, Kamal sat at the small table, staring at the simple room. His face was calm, but his eyes held heavy thoughts. He pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It was old and slightly torn, but the writing on it was clear, the name of a large company printed in bold letters. At the top was his own name. Kamal Sheikh, Chief Executive Officer. He stared at it for a long time, then put it back quickly as he heard footsteps outside. He could not let Aisha know, not yet. Later that evening, Aisha returned from the market. She found Kamal sweeping the floor, as though he had lived there for years. "You work too much," she said. He gave her a faint smile. "It keeps my mind busy." That night, they shared a simple meal. After dinner, Aisha finally asked the question that had been troubling her for days. "Kamal, may I ask you something?" He looked at her with calm eyes. "Yes." "You don't speak like other men from the streets. You don't behave like them either. Who are you really?" For a moment, Kamal was silent. His face gave nothing away. Finally, he replied, "I am just a man who lost everything." Aisha wanted to believe him, but her heart told her there was more. Still, she did not press him further. The next day, something unusual happened. While Kamal was repairing the old cupboard, Aisha noticed a small suitcase hidden beneath the bed. It was not hers. Curious, she waited until Kamal stepped outside to fetch water. She bent down and gently opened the suitcase. Inside were things that made her freeze. A neatly folded suit. A gold watch. Documents with Kamal's full name printed on them, official-looking papers connected to a powerful company. And on the top lay a silver pen, engraved with his initials. Her heart raced. This was not the life of a homeless man. This was the life of someone important. Before she could look deeper, the door creaked open. Kamal stepped inside. His eyes went straight to the suitcase in her hands. For the first time, his calm face changed. "You shouldn't have opened that," he said quietly. Aisha's hands shook. "Who are you, Kamal? Tell me the truth." He closed the suitcase slowly and locked it. His eyes met hers, full of intensity. "The truth is, I am not who you think I am. But if I tell you now, everything will change." Aisha's voice trembled. "Why are you hiding? Why live like this?" Kamal looked down, his jaw tight. "Because I needed to know if kindness still exists in this world. I needed to see if someone would help me without knowing who I really am." His words left her speechless. That night, Aisha could not sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the suitcase, the documents, and Kamal's strange confession. Who was this man really? Why would someone like him live as a beggar? Her curiosity grew stronger, but so did her fear. If Kamal was truly a powerful man, what did that mean for her? Meanwhile, Kamal sat quietly by the window, holding the golden ring in his hand again. He turned it slowly, lost in memories. His face was filled with both pain and strength. He whispered to himself, "Soon, she will know everything." But Aisha, lying only a few steps away, heard nothing. She only felt the heavy silence in the room, a silence filled with secrets. And as the night deepened, one thing became clear: this was no ordinary stranger. The man she had welcomed into her small home carried an identity that could change her life forever. The morning sun entered the small room through the broken window. Aisha was still lying on her bed, her mind restless. The image of the suitcase and the document she had seen the night before would not leave her thoughts. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the words again, Kamal Sheikh, Chief Executive Officer. She sat up, staring at the stranger who had become part of her life. He was sitting calmly near the table, sipping tea as though nothing had happened. His calmness made her even more uneasy. Finally, she gathered her courage. Kamal, she said firmly, I can't live with these questions anymore. Who are you really? No more half-truths. I deserve to know. Kamal placed the cup down slowly. His eyes met hers, steady and unreadable. For a moment, there was silence, so heavy that it almost hurt. Then he spoke. My name is Kamal Sheikh. I am not a beggar. I am not homeless. I am the owner of one of the biggest companies in this country. Aisha's heart skipped a beat. She shook her head in disbelief. You're a billionaire. A CEO. How is that possible? Why would you live like this? Kamal leaned back, his face serious. Because wealth is not always a blessing. Sometimes it blinds people. I wanted to know if there was still real kindness left in this world. So I left everything, my cars, my mansion, my power, and walked the streets with nothing. I wanted to see how people would treat me when I had nothing to offer. Aisha stared at him, her mouth slightly open. She could hardly believe the words coming out of his mouth. So all this time, you were testing people? Kamal nodded slowly. Yes. Most people turned away. They mocked me, ignored me, or pushed me aside. But then, there was you. His eyes softened as he looked at her. A girl with so little, yet you gave me everything you could, food, shelter, dignity. You didn't know who I was, but you helped me anyway. That is something money can never buy. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe it was the strange warmth in his words. She shook her head. I don't understand. Why me? Why my house? Kamal smiled faintly. Because fate wanted it. I could have stayed on any street corner. But that night, when you stopped and looked at me, it was different. You saw me as a human, not as a beggar. That changed everything. The truth was now out, but it left Aisha even more confused. She looked at her tiny home, then at Kamal, who had lived with her like a poor man. You could buy anything in the world. Why would you choose to live here, in my small house? Because here, I felt something I haven't felt in years, he said softly. Peace. Honesty. A life without masks. Aisha wiped her tears. But now what? You will go back to your world, and I will go back to mine. Isn't that how this ends? Kamal's face turned serious. No, Aisha. Meeting you was not an accident. You showed me something priceless. And I cannot walk away without giving you what you truly deserve. Her heart raced. What do you mean? That evening, Kamal left for a few hours. Aisha sat by the window, her thoughts racing. She wondered if he would return at all. Maybe he had told her the truth just to disappear. But as the night grew darker, she heard the sound of a car stopping outside her house. Not just any car, it was a black luxury car, shining even under the dim streetlights. Two men in suits stepped out, and then Kamal appeared, dressed in a sharp, tailored suit that made him look like a completely different man. Aisha's breath caught in her throat. This was no longer the weak, tired beggar she had taken in. This was the powerful CEO, the billionaire everyone respected. His presence filled the small street with authority. Neighbors peeked from their doors, shocked at the sight. Kamal walked inside, his eyes never leaving Aisha. She stood frozen, unsure what to say. I told you the truth, he said gently. And now, I will show you what it means. He handed her a small envelope. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a document. It was a letter of employment, offering her a high position in his company, with a salary she had never dreamed of. This is for you, Kamal said. Not as charity, but as recognition. You believed in me when I was nothing. Now I will make sure you never have to struggle again. Tears rolled down Aisha's cheeks. She didn't know whether to smile, cry, or refuse. Her world had changed in an instant. But as she stood there, holding the letter, one question still burned inside her heart. Why me, Kamal? Why do you care so much? And in his eyes, she saw the answer, though he did not speak it yet. The truth was out, but the story was not over. For Aisha, this was only the beginning of a life she had never imagined. The small house was silent except for the sound of Aisha's heartbeat. She held the letter in her hands, unable to believe what she was reading. A job at one of the biggest companies in the country, with a salary that could change her life forever. Her eyes lifted slowly to Kamal. He stood tall in his expensive suit, no longer the broken man she had found on the street. He was someone else now, a man of power, a man of wealth, a man who could shape her future with a single decision. But in his eyes, she still saw the same softness, the same quiet respect he had shown her as a stranger in rags. I don't know what to say, Aisha whispered, her voice trembling. Say nothing, Kamal replied gently. Just accept it. You gave me back something I thought was lost. Now it is my turn to give you something in return. The neighbors gathered outside, whispering and pointing. The poor girl who once lived in struggle was now standing beside a billionaire. Some were jealous, some were curious, but none could believe what they were seeing. Aisha's heart was torn. She wanted to believe this was real, but it felt like a dream. Why me, Kamal? You could help anyone. Why choose me? Kamal stepped closer, his voice firm but kind. Because when the world turned away from me, you didn't. You saw me as a human being. You gave me food, shelter, and dignity. Not because of who I was, but because of who you are. That kind of heart deserves more than this world can give. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. She had never thought of herself as special. She was just a poor girl trying to survive. But now, hearing his words, she realized her kindness had touched someone in ways she could never have imagined. The days that followed were like a storm of change. Kamal arranged everything quickly. Aisha was given proper training, new clothes, and a chance to work in his company. For the first time in her life, she walked into a tall glass building, not as a cleaner, not as a servant, but as an employee, a respected one. People stared, some with surprise, some with doubt. But Kamal made it clear, she is here because she earned it. Still, Aisha remained humble. She never forgot her little home, her simple meals, or the days of struggle. And every evening, she returned to thank God for the path she had been given. One evening, as the sun set behind the city, Kamal invited her to his office. The room was large, filled with shining furniture and walls of glass that looked out at the skyline. Aisha felt small in that place, but Kamal's warm smile gave her courage. I told you this was only the beginning, he said. She looked at him, confused. What do you mean? Kamal opened a drawer and placed a folder on the desk. Inside were papers, documents of ownership. This, he said, is a new home. It belongs to you now. No more broken windows. No more cold nights. You deserve comfort, safety, and peace. Aisha gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Kamal, this is too much. No, he interrupted softly. It is not enough. Nothing I give can equal the kindness you showed when I had nothing. Her tears fell freely. She could not stop them. But Kamal was not finished. He looked at her with deep eyes. Aisha, I have lived with wealth, power, and respect. But I learned that without love, all of it means nothing. You showed me love in its purest form, without expecting anything back. Her heart pounded. She understood what he was trying to say, but the words caught in her throat. Kamal stepped closer. I don't want to just reward you. I want you by my side, not as a helper, not as an employee, but as someone who means more to me than all the riches I own. Aisha froze. Was this real? Could a billionaire truly mean what he was saying? She searched his eyes for an answer, and what she found was honesty. Pure and undeniable. Kamal, she whispered, her voice breaking. He gently took her hand. Say yes, and your life will never be the same again. Outside, the city lights began to shine. Cars rushed by, people hurried home, but inside that tall office, time felt like it had stopped. A poor girl who once lived in shadows now stood at the center of a story she had never dared to dream. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was clear, kindness had opened a door that changed everything. And as she looked into Kamal's eyes, she finally understood. Sometimes, helping a stranger is not the end of a story. It is the beginning of the most beautiful chapter of all.